from the Chalmers University of Technology, who's going to talk about psychological safety in SAR. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. It touches very much upon what I'm going to talk of, which is interesting. And I tried to write a few notes down here from to remember for myself. My name is Fredrik Forsman, and I'm going to talk about the power of vulnerability, or psychological safety, or actually a bit about leadership and the importance of making sure people feel safe within the organization in order to make the most of the capabilities we got. Well, let's see if I can. Yeah. First, I want you to listen to me, not because of any titles or positions, but maybe mostly because what I say makes sense to you. And my background might have some interest, so you can filter out what I'm saying. I live in Sweden, and so that says something, because Scandinavia is a part of the world which is not the norm, not the standard. If you look at the world value chart, where you have the axis of religious aspects and secular aspects, we're kind of in the fringe far corner. So Scandinavians are a bit odd. And I'm saying that because we all are odd, depending on because of our viewpoint. So I'm not saying that my way or our way or my background is better than any. I'm just trying to be clear that I am biased, that I have a perspective. So what I'm advocating and trying to say here might not make sense to everyone and might not be applicable everywhere. However, I do believe in the principles, and I do believe that the principles are general. So having said that, today I work at Chalmers University of Technology. I train students to become master mariners, and my topics are leadership, strategy, crisis management. I also teach search and rescue, SAR on-scene coordination, and I try to teach how to deal with the unforeseen, how to deal with the upcoming event in a structured and as efficient as possible manner. So that's what I'm doing now, but I'm also a practitioner. I'm not only an academic. My background is I've been in the Swedish Amphibious Corps for 12 years, where I've taught high-speed navigation, and that is the pictures in the bottom of what you see here. And I had the opportunity to develop both the pedagogy and also the navigation methodology for those young men and women who we trained. And the interesting part there is that the Swedish military had a bit of a complex, an identity issue, where one thought one needed to be very tough and hard in order to deliver. And I don't see it as a conflict to deliver under very adverse conditions and being soft. So especially when we taught high-speed navigation, we are teaching young men and women in the age of their 20s to not only technically deal with a charging vessel within a tight archipelago in darkness, we also need to teach them to make good judgment. And that judgment is about both What are their capabilities? How skilled are they? And their knowledge about the skill in relation to the challenges at hand. And that requires some deep understanding of oneself. So when I talk to one of my soldiers, my students, and I want to make that person understand that what that person just did is unsafe, the last answer I want is, yes, Captain, I do understand. I want an answer that say, sorry, sir, I'm not sure I'm following. Please explain. And then we can have a dialogue and gradually try to progress kind of understanding. Of course, there are opportunities where a direct order and a yes, sir is appropriate. And that is when the time is short, the stakes are high, and time is more key, is more important than precision. So if we're on fire here in this room, it doesn't matter if I jump out of the window or through the door. I will break an ankle through the window, but I will survive. So it's, in such a situation, speed is more relevant. And then I had the opportunity to become a master mariner. I went to the Swedish, had an opportunity to go to the Swedish Sea Rescue Society, and that's the picture in the middle there. And I was the head of training for the Swedish Sea Rescue Society for a couple of years and built up a training organization there. And the interesting part here is that all of a sudden, the people you are engaging with are there on a voluntary basis. The military people, they are not voluntary. I trained conscripts who are there by law. But what struck me is that it really doesn't matter. None of these categories are getting paid, and still they really devote themselves to the task, both the soldiers and the volunteers within the Swedish Sea Rescue Society. And then it struck me that it's maybe not so much about the way to organize people. It's about how you meet them and how you treat them and how you build the story and how you make them believe in the story and how they feel seen within the organization. I also been sailing on high international level, and that is important to say, because when we speak of teamwork and we speak of very, very high skilled teamwork, that is one branch where teamwork is so essential, and you win and lose by the way the team functions. So any frictions within the team will have you make mistakes, and then you will gradually slide backwards in the field, and you won't be able to win. So winning in sail racing is the fundamentals there, is to not making mistakes. And when you have a smooth vessel with a smooth crew, then the tactician know what's on his palette, what maneuvers he can choose from, and then he has the opportunity. But most often we screw up for the tactician. So he asked us to do something and we're not able to do it. And the key factor there is teamwork, how well we perform together. So this is my background, both professionally, but I'm also going to share something very personal. And you might think, why would I like to share something very personal? I tell you later on, because it's an important aspect to psychological safety. And I'm a father of two. I have a son who is 12 and a daughter that is 14. None of them is able to go to school because of disabilities. And I will not go into detail on those because this is recorded, and I don't feel that confident of sharing that much in sharing more in this situation. However, I want you to know that I've been more or less struggling with getting my kids and then to endure, to getting my kids to feel okay, keeping my family together. And that is they have not been to school since 2019. And that has been a struggle. And earlier we had a question, if personal trauma spills over into the professional domain, and this is one example of that. It might not be categorized as a trauma maybe, but it's something that affects me in my everyday work. And still today I didn't manage to get my son to school just for 2 hours. So he's home today. Getting back to why that is important. So, well, what is psychological safety and why does that matter in SAR? Well, let's start in the other end. Workplace silence. When we work together, and for example, when we see we have the example of the sail racing yacht, it is key to speak up. It is key to talk. It is key to use all the perception in order to understand the situation. Together we become smarter. But if we don't speak up, if we don't talk, if we don't cherish each other's views upon things that happen, we become more stupid as a team. But to speak up is also is also something that scares many people. If we go back to our ancestors and our development, before technology, we were developed, and we were developed to live in tribes and teams and groups. And we survived by being in teams and groups. And if we were excluded from the group, then our survival chances become much less. They become much more slim. And thus, that is something we fear. We fear social isolation, maybe more than anything. And there is an Israeli psychologist that is, I think his name is Ben Shalit. And even though it was back in the 70s, he wrote a book about the psychology of war. And there is a passage where he speaks about why the soldier is fighting. And his argument is that why is the soldier staying in a place where someone else literally is trying to kill him? Why isn't he running away 3 kilometers in that direction where there's no firing going on, the sun is shining, and the weather is nice? And he argues that the fear of social isolation is greater than the fear of death sometimes. And if that is true, it says something about the power of the team and also the fear of being isolated. So if you don't want to be isolated, it's better to be silent. If I don't want to be viewed upon, well, don't ask. And if I don't want to be looked at as incompetent, well, don't admit weakness or mistakes. And if I don't want to be looked upon as intrusive, well, don't offer ideas. And if I don't want to be viewed upon as negative, don't the status quo. And might sound pretty straightforward, but in many cases, we see example of this in everyday work life. There's, especially when there is a distance between the interference and the accident or the consequence. So I'm very inspired by a researcher named Amy Edmondson, and she's the one that has coined the idea of psychological safety. And one of her examples is within medical care, where nurses understand that a doctor is about to give the wrong doses of some treatment, but they don't speak up. Because speaking up in such a situation is offering critique. It might be intrusive, and if they are wrong, they might feel incompetent. There are one, or, and I say one, I don't say them because that goes for me as well. One is not too keen to do that. And also there is a distance between what actually is going on and the consequence. And there's also the idea of whose responsibility is this? Is it mine or is it the doctor's? And we see this within the maritime industry as well. And the whole idea of bridge resource management as a training builds very much upon this idea. So we have the notion of challenge and response within the bridge team. So, and the idea of that is that you state what you're doing in order so that the other person is able to actually question and challenging what you are doing. And what we are challenging is not each other's persons, it's the actions we are taking. And there lies a huge difference, which is incredibly important to understand. If I am driving and you are coming up on the bridge and you see that, well, Fredrik is actually very much to starboard here, maybe too much to starboard. There is a risk of squat here. We might run aground. And if you challenge me and say, Fredrik, aren't we a bit too much to starboard? Shouldn't we go a little bit more to port to avoid the squat effect? And I've been there myself. I've said stupid things like, who is in charge here? You or me? Okay? Don't you think I knew my job? And that, when I mix that questioning me as a person instead of questioning what I'm doing, that it's easily to become emotional and take a conflict. And the person that is challenging me is maybe going to do that once or twice, and then he will stop. At the moment the other person stops, we have become less smart. We are not that intelligent anymore. And here is where workplace silence or the lack of psychological safety in the team actually becomes a physical risk. We are not as physical safe anymore. So it's psychological safety goes two ways. It's both about strengthening people to endure tough environments, to feel better, and to strengthen their psychological responses. So it's about making people last in a tough environment and be okay. And the other aspect is that actually safe will become more stupid if there's a low level of psychological safety. So workplace silence, it works for emotional self-protection, but it robs ourselves from learning, and we don't innovate and we don't develop. And these are pretty important aspects: learning, innovate, develop, especially if we are working in a dynamic and changing environment. And as you all know, search and rescue is such a dynamic, changing, and also uncertain environment. In many situations, we don't know what's going to happen next, and in many shouts we sail at or we're doing, we don't really know what the problem is at the beginning. It might be we might suspect that someone is in danger and peril, but we're not sure, and we really don't know where, and we really don't know who. So, and in such a situation, there's a great amount of uncertainty. And then we need all the cognitive capabilities we have on board and within the system with the Maritime Rescue Center or the Air Rescue Center and the search and rescue units and everybody on board, we need all the minds to play their part in this, in order to uncover the story, in order to uncover what actually has happened. And within this situation, there is also, there's not only correct information, there's bits of correct information, but often there are distorted information, there is wrong information. So we need to make assumptions. We need to start somewhere. We need to make assumptions in order to get moving. And these assumptions needs to be challenged when we get new pieces of information. And some of the assumptions we are dealing with might harden into facts, and others turn out to be wrong, and they needs to be discarded. This is a very, very tricky question. This is a very tricky task to manage, especially under stress. But as you see here, words as learning or being creative or innovative, as we see here, are key in order to have this process going. So I will argue that without a decent level of psychological safety, we will have a harder time dealing with these kind of situations where we have a high degree of uncertainty, where the situation is complex, and we need to be innovative, creative, and actually interact with the problem to discover what the needs are and how we can deal with it. So Amy Edmondson defines psychological safety as a belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And she also adds to that in other places that it's not only about not being punished by the others. That's the first step. The second step is that your peers, your colleagues actually treasure when you challenge, because they know when you challenge, you are actually providing to the safety and to the cognition of the team. So we have a little bit about push-pull here. Not being punished or treasured for actually speaking up. So this is something that, of course, is easily said. It's easy to talk about. It can be pretty hard to do, and I would say it's pretty much of a matter of nourishing a culture. And I've been speaking of this for many occasions, and in some organizations and in some cultures, well, this flies pretty well, and in others the conditions are different. The culture might be that the leader always must be the strong one. The leader must be the one that always has the answer, or else he will lose face, and the organization is reliant on that person being that solid. And then we have a different frame to work within, and then my thoughts here might not be directly applicable. However, I believe that a wise leader can implement parts of this way of thinking regardless of the culture, but one must always take that into account and be realistic about what is possible within the organization and with the culture one is working. So I would like to go back while I talk a bit about my, or shall I do that now? Yeah, I've started with that. Yeah, I mentioned that I haven't been working full time since 2019. Of course, my kids haven't gone to school and we have had a real struggle. Well, this might not have anything to do with my job at a first glance, but well, I would argue it has. And if we are to conduct some sort of potential riskful activity together, either riskful for ourselves or riskful for someone else, you want to know this. You want to know my home situation. You want to know how I feel, because if I'm not at my best, if I am anxious, if I am I'm dreading that my wife is not any longer coping with me and the family, that it has become too much for her, if I'm dreading for the health of my kids, or for that matters, if I'm dreading if I have economical issues, that the interest rate has gone that high up that I might not can afford the mortgage anymore. You want to know that, because that will affect me at work. That will affect how cognizant I am on the task we are doing together. So if we're doing search and rescue, if we are heading out to on a shout in the darkness, and I'm thinking of other things, well, then it becomes a true risk. But if there is an atmosphere where I can speak of that, if we do have a level of psychological safety where I can speak up and say, hey guys, I just need to say this, I'm not very well today, this is what's happened to me, and I feel terrible, I'm sorry. And you say, all right, Fredrik, thank you, we understand that. So maybe you take a step back today and this person instead do your job. Perfect, thank you. Or, thanks for saying, Fredrik, we'll keep an eye on you. But just knowing that it is okay for me to say that, and having said that, and having been seen and heard by you, is relief. Which means that you have seen me, you have acknowledged my problem. You don't need to solve it. But yeah, Fredrik, we understand. Thanks for sharing. Whew. That made me just maybe not a tiny bit, but a rather big bit more present here and now in what we're about to do. So that's why I told you about my children and my home situation. Because if we were about to do dangerous stuff together, you would like to know that. And I would like to know that so you can cover for me, and vice versa. And if we don't have that psychological safety, that is not happening, and that is a safety risk. So the soft aspects of teamwork and the hard aspects of teamwork go hand in hand. So I would like to, from here, move back and take you on a small journey. I would like to take you on a story, and from that do some small detours into different aspects of leadership and teamwork. And this is a couple of pictures from 2015, and it's been a while now, but I had the opportunity to be a coxswain on a search and rescue vessel within the Mediterranean during the great migration of people from Syria through Turkey and into Greece. And to try to give a backdrop and to squeeze that story into something understandable, the Swedish Sea Rescue Society did something that I'm very impressed and grateful for being no, I'm grateful for being a part of. I'm impressed of all the people that did it, and I'm sure that there are many in the audience that have similar experiences and also been there in that crisis as well. So my experiences aren't unique in any way. However, they are mine, and I can talk from them. So on a very short notice, I think it was 28 days from the decision was made until we, as the first crew, stood down at Samos in the Mediterranean. Well, it went pretty quick to go there, and thus one has very limited capabilities of preparation, and there are little time to train, and there are huge amount of uncertainties. So what we did here is when we dropped down there, the first thing we needed to do was to just try to diminish or reduce the uncertainty, try to bring more clearness to the situation. Who is owning the shouts? Are there any organized way of doing search and rescue here? How does the organized crime look? What organizations and people are in conflict with those that we need to gain trust from, and thus which people should we not cooperate with, and many questions like that. And that was my job, trying to solve that. Well, no, not for myself, but being a part of solving that. But it's very interesting from the avenue of dealing with uncertainty, because in that moment there were enormous amount of uncertainty to start with. We very soon realized that it was the captain on the local Coast Guard office that were the key for us to be able to do certain rescue in that area. So we started to talk to him and to negotiate with him and try to win his confidence and to trust in us in order to let us do things. And this was a challenging situation, because we had not only Swedish search and rescue personnel, we had search and rescue personnel from Greece, and also we had the Coast Guard. And trying to get this blend and mix to function was tough. It was hard. But I think that, speaking of the psychological safety, there is also the need of things being understandable and practical. So I also rely pretty heavily on Susan Whelan's writing, where she has this integrated model of group development. She views group development in 4 stages, where you have the first stage where, well, people want to belong. They are very humble and they are polite. But when they have understood that they are accepted within this team and they have decided for themselves that they want to belong, we have a phase of conflict where everyone is, not everyone, but most people is actually challenging both sideways, upways, and to see what is my position within this, and you who are above me here, should I listen to you or not? Should I accept you or not? And you also push sideways. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. On the contrary, it's a necessity in order to sort things out, to move on to the more productive stages. And the third stage is when you have accepted the roles and work on the goals, and you get a team that is very productive. And the fourth stage is where you can, as a leader, step back, because people know actually what they are going to do, and you don't need to tell them to do it, because they are they are feeling safe. They have their mandate. They know what's delegated to them, and they have the freedom, and they also are competent and capable of using that freedom. So the leadership that the different groups needs first, depending on the maturity of the group. So in the first stages and levels, well, you need to be pretty clear who is doing what and when. And in the face of the conflict, I've seen many leaders do the mistake of meeting that kind of conflicts with power and manifesting themselves very hard, which might give effect in the short run, but it also locks the team into the second phase of conflict, and you will not be able to gain the benefits of having more self-organized and self-structured teams. But having said that, for our team down here, goals and roles were very clear. The unclearness was the context, the conditions. But what we were there to do was clear. And we also had an hierarchy that was clear. And by being that clear in that situation, and the situation being that short, we never really saw any conflicts arising, challenging the leadership, actually. But I would say that the goals and the roles, why are we here, what is my part in this, is key. In search and rescue, it can be very clear, not always, of course. However, gaining the trust of the captain at our harbor was hard, and it took a while, but he trusted us. A certain day, he trusted us with a very simple mission. 3 people had fallen off a life raft at a rough position. He wanted us to go there, have a look, and we did. So during the mission, he got another shout, and he had already his boats fully engaged in other search and rescue, so they weren't available. So the captain had to gamble. Either he will send our 2 boats to this new place, and we might mess up, or we might save a lot of people, or else he will have to explain a lot of drownings because he didn't have any resources to send there. So my guess or my belief is that he gambled with us. And we also had there were people on the rocks and in the water on 2 places. And he wanted us to separate the boats. He wanted to send one boat to Gathos and one boat to Agathanisi. And there is approximately a 1-hour drive between those places. And I was this close of accepting that. But then my colleague Andreas Arvidsson, he laid his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Fredrik, don't split the boats. We are our only safety. No one else is going that shallow as we do, and we maneuver far more close to the land. So if we are having trouble, no one will be there for us. So we need to work in pairs." And so we did. And that day we rescued quite a bit of people from the place we went, and on the other place 3 people drowned, and that is something we have to live with. On the other hand, the experience from the place we went was that we needed both the boats, and I'm so happy that we were 2 boats there, because the picture you see here is from the beginning of that of the rescue process there. So we ended up in a small creek, small bay. There were a ton of debris in the water, jackets, bags, clothes, everything, and maybe about, I know it, little less than 50 people in the water. And we started to work there. And very shortly, I had sucked in debris in the water jet and lost the maneuverability, and we were in the middle of rescuing people, and we had this fishing boat, this rib you see here, and they helped us picking up people from the water. We have there's the girl that the fisherman is carrying there. Her name is Leanne. She is not filled. Oh, she's almost 4 years old. She's not breathing, and we're getting her on board. So we're having a CPR on her, and just moments later we're getting another child, and 1 year and an infant that also is not breathing. So in that moment we have 2 people that we're doing CPR on, picking up people from the water. I have no maneuverability, trying to back flush the water jets, and in that moment I'm very grateful for having the other boat not that far away, which means that I felt safe thanks to that. And I felt safe that I could still be carrying out our mission. I feel safe enough not to abort due to loss of maneuverability. We had 4 children on board that day that didn't breathe. 2 of them didn't survive. And we also had to prioritize who to give CPR to. And the one we prioritized, they survived. And the one that we didn't, they did not survive. And I won't dwell too much on that, but when it comes down to the crew, that is kind of it's a very challenging situation, and there is potential for trauma. But it's maybe, and the trauma here or the problem here is that you can be incapacitated by responsibility, and I was this close of actually panicking just before, when I realized the depth of the situation, and when I realized that today there is no happy ending. Today people will perish, and there is nothing I can do to avoid that, and that thought was suffocating. And then another thought arise, or emotion rather, and that was acceptance. Yes, today people will perish. There's nothing you can do about it. But the better you as a team can function, the fewer will perish. So play your best game, Fredrik, you ever played. Play your role in this and play it as well as you can. So I did that. I played my role. And my role in this is delivered through others. I was the coxswain, so, and I know I have skilled personnel, so I'm not telling them how to do their job. I'm just making sure that they are working on the right problems and focusing their effort, and that requires psychological safety. And I think we had a rather high level of that. Psychological safety is also about, I think another way of looking at it is to look at life or look at working experience as a learning process. Mark said something earlier about following up or following through, and not trying to make perfect from start. If if things are uncertain, it is impossible to make the best plan or the perfect plan in advance. You need to make some assumptions based on your knowledge and your skills, and then you need to try them. And when you're trying things, well, some things will fly and some things won't fly, and then you learn and you adapt, and this adaptation process is pretty much what we want. And in order to do that, we want people to speak up, to feel safe to speak up. In order we won't get that learning, and so to try to learn within this context, we went back to the site of the accident the day after, and this is where we are now looking at where things happened and how it looked like in nicer weather, and trying to understand and a lot of mixed emotions here, both for those people we just saw. It was hell on earth, but it's also extremely beautiful, and we are there under different occasions and circumstances, and it is to some extent it is an adventure and also fun, which actually can give you bad consciousness, because I remember I treasured the experience at the same time as, and I had fun part time of that, and I felt guilty because people were perishing under these conditions also. But that's part of being human. We are not either or, we are both, and we have mixed emotions for things. We also practiced things that we had come up with in situation. I'm going to skip ahead here to a couple of slides, and I'm going to skip back later. Bear with me. On another shot we had a bit later, there were people trapped rocks, and they couldn't get away from there. And we tried to get to them with a search and rescue unit, but we didn't manage. We different captains, different boats tried, but the sea was too high. But I looked into the water and thought, well, it's swimmable. We have the equipment, and we have the training to do it. And then the radio sparked, and that idea popped up from the other boat. And then it's very easy to say, well, yeah, go ahead, because they have done the same risk assessment as I have. And soon after, a couple of people jumped into the water and could start helping them. We didn't really understand how to get them from the shore, so we improvised with a raft. You can see here in the middle of the picture here. And let's see if the next video will work. No, it doesn't. So now I'm going to click a bit. Bear with me. Yeah, was what we did that day after the main rescue I spoke of was actually going back to the place and try out different things that we have come up with during the shout, and trying to fine tune and make sure that we could do it again with less risk. The idea here I wanted to come through is that psychological safety is a requisite for learning, and learning is a process. It's not about reaching an end goal. It's about constantly developing and adapting, and seeing people for who they are, and accepting people, and being able to differentiate between the person himself and his behavior is also key. I can criticize someone for or question someone for what they are doing, and if we do have psychological safety, they don't feel questioned as a person. And then we have a much bigger room for actually doing development and addressing things and talking about things and making things conscious. During these shouts, we developed a way of speaking to each other. We instead of me as the leader asking when I don't have an answer, instead of me asking, okay guys, what should we do here, which I don't feel confident doing all the time. Instead, we were starting to asking each others, all right guys, please help me think. Because when I as the coxswain say, okay, please help me think, I still maintain the decision. I'm not asking for their solution. It's still my decision. And if I'm asking for help to think, people can come with half-baked ideas instead of feeling obliged to come with an idea that can fly by itself. So you're inviting a process where more ideas can come to the table. And when more ideas come to the table, you are getting a broader spectrum of ideas. And then these ideas will infuse each other's in order to generate the second level of ideas. It's a great way to get the most out of a team and to get them to think together. And then still, I'm in command, so it's my job to make a decision. All right, I'll listen to you, and I think this is the smartest. So let's go with this alternative. We do like this, and then all have been heard and been recognized and have contributed to a solution. And this contribution part to me is key, because when we deal with complex situations, there are where there are a lot of things to understand. We do have competent, intelligent personnel around us. It's so effective to make use of them. And then again, of course, this is under the condition that we have time available enough to do this. In some cases there aren't, and then action is required, and then you can't ask that question. But I would encourage you to think about this. Are there any situations in your work where it's applicable to take a step back and not make a decision right away and ask for the other's opinion in order to make the decision or the material for the decision richer? I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm looking at my clock here, and we have about 10 minutes for questions. I'm just thinking if I should say something a bit more about leadership and psychological safety. Yeah, maybe. I started saying that it is a prerequisite for courageous leadership, and as you understand, I represent and advocate a certain style of leadership, and it might not be the right or the pertinent way for everyone, and I'm aware of that. But all I'm saying is this is how I look at it, and I'm glad if there are any things that you can you think that would be of use for you. If Well, psychological safety is key in order to make the team as smart as possible. People need to feel safe to open up. And then me, if I am the manager, if I am the leader, if I am in charge, there's no need for me to be perfect. And no one of us are perfect. We do have good days, we do have bad days, and we have characters that are in some occasions regarded as very treasurable, and in other situations your character is maybe not that wanted. So we fit differently, but being honest, for me, honesty is key, and that is also why we managed to get through without the potential trauma when we had these rather challenging situations. I am honest with my strength and my weaknesses. I am honest with my family conditions. People around me know that I'm not perfect. They know that I have difficulties at home. They know also my character flaws. I am, for example, I am terrible in planning and managing. I am great in improvising, however, and I'm great. I function well in chaotic situations. But sitting here at this office, trying to plan stuff and do stuff, I'm lousy, but not lousy enough to get fired at least. So I try to be straightforward with that. And then in my team, there are people that are better in that can compensate. And so as a team, we can cope. As a team, we can have these capabilities of foresight and planning and structure that I may not provide. And the psychological safety is that it goes both ways. If I want my personnel to be open with how they feel and how what they think, I need to do the same towards them, and that is in order for us to be able to keep each other's backs, compensate for each other's weaknesses, but it's about feeling safe of challenging. When we're doing safety critical activities, we need to be able to challenge each other's behavior in order to keep the safety. Because if you shut up, if we are becoming locked down into workplace silence, we are becoming more stupid as a team, and then we will also be in more danger. So I think that will be my finishing point, and I hope that some of what I've said might be of interest to you. So thank you so much for listening, and now I'm pretty curious. Are there any questions? Let's see here. Do you notice a generational difference in how people value psychological safety and crew resource management? Oh, that one was an interesting. Yeah. Well, now that is a good question. From I'm not sure I can answer about generational differences about how you see psychological safety and crew resource management. However, I see a difference from a viewpoint from the civil society and the maritime industry. And I believe when I speak to my students, when they are coming back they're having their periods of they're doing as an internship, a couple of months, coming back and doing another couple of months at sea. And when they are coming back, I understand that in many shipping companies, the attitudes are very, very rough and tough. So I'm not sure if it's about generations. I think it's about organizations rather. Oh, this is a tricky question. How would you deal with leaders that doesn't allow for psychological safety in their team? Oh, that's a very good question. And now I think I would like to refer back to Mark here, that said that if you don't have top management with you, you are lost. If I interpreted you right or correctly. So if I have my next level of manager that does not allow for psychological safety, well, if I have the luxury of voting with my feet, I would probably move to another position. If I don't have the luxury of moving, it's a hard time dealing with someone that is not providing the conditions for psychological safety. It's always very, very hard to change on someone else's behavior. The only person's behavior that we actually can change is our own behavior, and try to change someone else's behavior that maybe doesn't want to change his behavior it's extremely rare and hard. See, do we have any more questions here? Not sure how. Yep, Caroline is providing another. What is a good way to respond to someone in a leadership role who is not creating a safe space for crew to open up? Well, I think, well, depending on what kind of dependency you are to that person, I believe in honesty, but in honesty and respect and maybe it could be a way to deal with it, actually to bring it up to discussion. But to be very clear, to speak of the phenomena and not the person. So the person you're addressing, if you're talking to that person and making that person feel that it is something wrong with him or her, then they will probably apply defense mechanisms and you will hit a brick wall. But if you can be subtle or smart, you don't need to be subtle all the time. Sometimes you can be very straightforward, but you need to be smart. You can address the problem. And if they understand that psychological safety is key for both safety and for mental well-being, if they understand that, well, then you can put them into that kind of discussion where you create a discussion of how do we get there, and maybe you can make them think that this new thing with psychological safety is their idea. Tricky one though. All right, let's see here. Caroline, if someone is noticeably suffering but not speaking up in the group, how would you support them? Oh, there's this bystander perspective of how do we make each other stronger. I strongly believe in camaraderie support, in peer support. And this goes also for when you have had a very strong experience that might lead to PTSD.
Okay. Jag hittade det här på webben om experience.
Sorry, now Siri thinks I want to talk to her. Yeah, so camaraderie support is an efficient way, in my experience, to both mitigate potential upcoming trauma, but also support someone in the situation. And we all, we want to be seen. We want to be noticed, and we want to be part of the team. So actually making sure that people are feeling seen is very easy, and it's very simple and very effective. So, and sometimes it doesn't need more than that in order to create some relief for that person. So let's see here. We have another question. Are you not afraid that allowing the team to question the approach of the captain will cause discussion and danger this situation where I don't see the full questionnaire. It's cut off by in some way. Well, there is there is of course a risk to it in order to let the team in and question the captain, and if you have a culture where the captain needs to know everything, and where it is expected that the captain has the answers, then I would say making this transition too quickly is not probably preferable. However, I do think that opening up for questioning the activities of what you're doing is beneficial in the long run. But it also depends on the situation. There are situations that are time restricted, that are where we are limited, and where we really need to make quick decisions, and the captain needs to be unquestioned in those decisions. We need to take action now, because if the action are delayed, it will cause risk. So and that's a maturity thing for the crew to actually know when it's time to just shut up and just say yes sir and do what's told, and when you can dial back and talk of these things. But there's this dynamics between different situations require different leadership. So questioning what's going on, it's not preferable. No, is that answer to the question? All right. Now I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm answering question until you interrupt me. Let's see here. We have Sean read about Stu rotates crew in and out of deployment to reduce the amount of trauma on individuals. Well, I can just speak for what we did, and yes, we did. Not necessarily, or from two perspectives, both for getting mainly because of people can't be away from job and family too long, so it was conducted in 2 weeks stints, so to say. But I believe that there is in our potentially mental health effect of actually going out of a high stress situation for 2 weeks and then debrief, relax, and regain strength and maybe going back in. One had to be a bit careful doing that. I know we had a bad fire here in Sweden many years ago, Scandinavian Star, I believe, and there were, not sure of the exact number, but the ship was moored to the quay. There was in fire. There were many deaths. I think 150 people or something around there perished. And the rescue team, the smoke divers, they saw horrendous scenes in there. People piled up against closed doors. And they did the mistake, or they did something that they learned from there, and that was they took the rescue personnel out before the mission was done and accomplished, and started to debrief them. And the ones that they started to debrief, they weren't able to send them back because they became so affected. So doing patient needs to be done with some thought. So if you're planning to send them back, if you rotate them out, you need to do it soon enough so they won't be exhausted, but they need to have pretty much time to recalibrate and regain strength before you send them in. You can't send them in the next day. At least that wasn't possible with smoke divers. Right, Don. I think the team are close. I think if the team are close and open, questioning things for safety should always be allowed. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good claim. And Matthew Fader here is in the comment section, and he is replying to Sean here. Matthew Fader was actually one of the people that organized this whole operation from the Swedish Sea Rescue Society's part, and I was just merely one of the volunteers participating, although I had the fortune and the opportunity to be trusted to be one of the coxswains in the first when the boats went down there first. Mags Kelly, do you utilize building the mental model, the ways of working with a team, so they know the right scenarios to question and to follow? Yeah, well, thank you. That's a very good question. And I would like to say yes. I'm trying to build mental models, but of course I'm also full with shortcomings. And in the best of days, I might do that, and hopefully I do that on a subconscious level, so that we speak of that. And also I try to give instant feedback when it's time to speak up and when it's time to shut up, without being angry with people, because I strongly believe that getting an organization to function is a learning experience, and it's not a learning experience getting from A to B, it's a learning experience ongoing. So in order to do that, you must realize that people screw up, and and it doesn't become perfect, and that's a part of it. And when it doesn't become perfect, and when you get frictions, treasure those incidents as learning opportunities, and say, and I'm not saying you should accept them and say, oh, anything goes and anything is good. On the contrary, this did not go as we wished for. This went pretty bad. Okay, why did it go pretty bad? All right, so I was giving a strict order. I needed you to follow that really fast, or else you see the consequences here. We need to become better in differentiating when we can challenge and when we need to work quick. But I believe in the discussion and the dialogues of when the situation has de-escalated. Okay, let's go back to it and discuss it. And by doing that, you also are building trust within your team, so that they will trust you when you raise the voice. Then, okay, I hear Fredrik's voice. Now it's time for action, not talking. You talked about the 4 stages of team building. Which author did you mention? Well, I'm a great fan of Susan Whelan, and her model is a integrated model of group development, and she has done a great work of looking at a lot of different group development models and kind of condensed them into her an overarching perspective. And it's very well researched, simple, straightforward, very applicable. I like a lot. Caroline. Yeah, okay. Now I'm seeing that Caroline is telling me to shut up and stop answering questions. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for all the questions, and I'm very grateful for being invited here. Hope you waste your time. Thank you.